Have you ever wondered how different our world would be if history had taken just one different turn? What if the age of discovery, the one we all learn about, didn't start in Europe, but in China? Well, we're about to dive into an incredible alternate history, one where a single decision, just one, could have completely rewritten the last 600 years of everything.
Okay, so picture this. The year is 1440. A massive fleet appears off the coast of, say, Portugal. But these aren't the ships you're thinking of. They are colossal treasure junks from Ming, China. Ships so huge, they literally dwarf anything in Europe at the time. Now, this isn't fantasy. This is a real possibility that all hinged on one critical decision, that in our timeline went the other way.
So, here's our game plan for this journey. First, we'll set the stage, and then we're going to pinpoint the exact moment our timeline splits from this other one. From there, we'll trace the immediate shockwaves, explore two totally different futures that could have sprung from that moment, and finally, imagine what our world, right now, would actually look like. Let's get into it.
Right, so let's be super clear here. This is not science fiction. What we're doing is exploring a grounded, totally plausible alternate history. And the most important thing you need to get is that the barrier to this happening wasn't about ability, it wasn't about technology.
This right here, this is the whole story. Back in the early 15th century, Ming China's naval technology was, without a doubt, the most advanced on the entire planet. Their ships could have sailed to Europe, no problem. The only thing that stopped them was a political choice, a sudden change in priorities back in the imperial court. So if you just flip that one decision, you've flipped the entire world on its head.
So where exactly is that pivot point? I mean, what's the specific moment where everything changes? To get that, we need to quickly look at a key idea from this kind of historical thinking.
It's called the point of divergence, and it's exactly what it sounds like. It's that fork in the road where our real history goes one way and this alternate history goes another. And for our story, that moment happens deep inside the Ming Emperor's court.
All right, so look at this. In our real history, the legendary Admiral Zheng He made his incredible voyages between 1405 and 1433. Our point of divergence is right there in the middle, around 1425. Instead of stopping the program, the emperor and his court decide to make it permanent state policy. I mean, they institutionalize it. And the result? By 1440, bam, first contact in Europe. And within just a generation, the world's entire power structure starts to warp and reshape itself.
So the fleet arrives. It's the 1440s. What happens next? Well, the consequences are just immediate. And they're massive. Because this is not a meeting of equals. Not even close.
Just try to imagine that scene for a second. The royal courts in Portugal, or maybe the Italian city-states, they're used to being the center of their own universe. And then suddenly, these envoys show up from a unified, centralized empire that has wealth and technology so far beyond anything they've ever seen. This isn't just a discovery. It is a complete upending of how they see the world and their place in it.
The fallout is instant. Global trade routes, they're now being established from east to west, with China at the center. Ming diplomats are the ones with all the leverage. But here's the biggest thing. The flow of knowledge completely reverses. You can just imagine a European Renaissance fueled not just by old Greek texts, but by absorbing Chinese breakthroughs in printing, in navigation, in philosophy. And get this, what if those fleets kept going across the Atlantic? They could trigger a Columbian exchange 50 years early, but on completely different terms.
Okay, so from that single moment of contact, history doesn't just go down one new path. It actually splits. Our analysis points to two really big and really plausible branches that could grow out from here over the next few centuries. So what are these two futures? Well, in branch A, you get what we're calling Sinocentric continuity. China basically just keeps its lead, stays outward-looking, and builds a global order centered on itself. European nations become important, sure, but they're junior partners. But then there's branch B, pluralized competition. In this version, the shock of China's arrival actually kicks Europe into high gear. It starts a massive arms race, forcing them to innovate and militarize like crazy. And that leads not to a world run by one power, but to an intense global rivalry centuries ahead of schedule.
All right, let's hit fast forward. How did these two different branches play out all the way to today? What would our world, the year 2025, actually look and feel like in either of these realities?
And we're not just talking about some minor tweaks here. The very foundations of our modern life, who's in charge, the languages we speak, how our economies work, all of it would be completely and utterly transformed.
This table just lays it all out so clearly.
The dominant languages on the planet wouldn't be English or Spanish, but probably Mandarin. The Industrial Revolution? It's a toss-up. Maybe it's delayed because a dominant China wouldn't have the same pressure to innovate so disruptively. Or maybe it happens even earlier because of that fierce global competition. And the Americas? Forget centuries of European colonization. You might see early Chinese-led trade networks, or a wild scramble for influence between multiple powers. The bottom line is, the Western-led world of 2025 gets replaced by either a Chinese-led one or a truly multipolar one.
So, after all that, what's the big takeaway? I mean, beyond just the fun of the what if, what does an experiment like this really teach us about our own history, the one that actually happened?
You know, it really all boils down to this. A single political decision back in the 1420s could have realistically sent the world down one of two profoundly different roads. Outcome A gives us a planet shaped by Chinese culture and institutions for 600 years. Outcome B creates a world of intense, early competition that might have even accelerated technology. Neither one was guaranteed, but both were absolutely on the table.
And that leaves us with one last question for you to think about. Which of those two worlds seems more plausible? The one with sustained dominance by a single power, or the one with constant competition? You know, your answer might just reveal how you see our own history, not as some destiny that was written in stone, but as a long series of choices that could have so easily gone the other way.